Welcome back to another episode of Thrivers Ed. I am so excited today because we have a very special guest. We have Wendy Alexander joining us. Now, Wendy is an interview and career coach, and she helps midlife and menopausal women ditch that good, secure job narrative and actually claim their dream careers. Drawing from her own journey of overcoming adversity, Wendy guides her clients to present confidently, negotiate their worth, and create the fulfilling careers that they truly deserve. Wendy, welcome to the show.
Hello, lovely to be here. Thank you for
Lovely.
having me, Marcy.
Absolutely. It's absolutely my pleasure. Wendy, you've had a really remarkable journey. Can you share a little bit about that path and what has inspired you to start this career of helping women find their dream careers?
Well, finding the dream careers was my own journey when I got to menopause, that menopause stage in life. I had a lot of problems. I had severe symptoms, physical symptoms, and also mental symptoms. Now, the physical symptoms are probably expected because read about it, you hear about it. No one was really talking about it, though, I will say that. But it was probably the mental and emotional symptoms that really knocked me. And I think it was a combination of the severe physical symptoms, no sleeping. So I felt like I was a new mother again. I was having, maybe 1, 2 hours sleep, severe brain fog. That was probably the biggest surprise. And I know it's not something that a lot of people talk about.
Hmm.
And certainly I had no idea that that came with menopause. So here I was, I had built up this career, and that had come from challenges as well. Being one of the first women in an executive leadership team here in Melbourne. So a lot of the time I was navigating challenging situations anyway. But when menopause came and the severe brain fog came, suddenly there was a huge dent in my confidence
Hmm.
because I was known as this highly productive, competent woman running 200, $300 million programs of work and managing big teams and so on. And all of a sudden, my brain's not working anymore like it used to. And I'm writing down lists and lists of things, and I'm still forgetting certain
Hmm.
things. I have a list and just phase out. And then the other symptom for me that was very severe was the hot flashes, which for me came with severe nausea.
Hmm.
So suddenly I'm running out of meetings. I mean, these meetings with these men, and I have to dash because a hot flash would hit, this nausea would come, and I'd have to race out of the room. And obviously that started happening more frequently. Um, so they start to notice,
Hmm.
and one of my colleagues came into my office one day and just asked me and said, are you okay? What's going on? And I was like, so here's where I think women are probably a little bit at fault. So I tried to brush it off and said, oh, just been going through a few things, not feeling so well lately, instead of having the conversation with him. Um, and this is one of the things when I work with women now, it's like if someone notices and asks, don't hide away from the conversation, because in that way we to blame. Guys aren't necessarily going to know. And a lot of the leadership teams in most corporations are still heavily dominated by males,
Hmm.
right? So that's one thing to know. And then the other side of that is not being so scared to actually say, you know what? I don't actually know what's happening. I need support. I need to go figure this out. We try and hide away from it. And I certainly did because I was terrified. And I suppose years where things are stacked against women, I was terrified of losing my role.
Hmm.
I had been very good at it. And I knew I was good at it. And I had good teams and we were cohesive and we were delivering great work. So it was very, very difficult to admit to that myself and then to try and manage it and hide it from, the big decision makers.
Yeah.
So I do believe that I, at that time, was probably my own worst enemy. But I will also say that even when I did start speaking about it, there wasn't a lot of room for that conversation. because men get very awkward. I mean, they get awkward when we have periods, right?
For
Like
sure.
if a woman comes comes to a boss and says, I need to take a day, because some women go through severe period symptoms and they
Mhm.
need to take a day off or something for the first day or something. But they'll come up with loads of excuses instead of saying that's what it is, because the moment you mention it, men start shifting very awkwardly. And, so when it came to menopause, it was probably 10 times worse.
It's really interesting what we have, how we react in order to protect, in this case, kind of the patriarchy, the men around us, to not admit that we are honestly, we can't handle everything all of the time. We don't have these superwoman capes
Correct.
where we're able to do all of the things. If a man gets a paper cut, he's laying down, he's calling the ER, like everything is just very dramatic when they're sick. And we go through excruciating pains at different times in our life, and we're expected to kind of grin and bear it, to not take our discomfort and put it on others. Is that something you see a lot with your clients, is kind of protecting other people?
Absolutely. So that's what I did. That's certainly what a lot of the women I work with still do. And so part of the work that I do with women, apart from helping them identify strengths that they can then sell into an organization or a business if they're now wanting to go for the dream career, one of the other things that I do with them when I do this work is advocacy for us midlife women, right? Because we haven't done that. And a lot of us end up leaving our jobs, or we cut back, or we do something completely different. And some women love their jobs. Some women, a lot of women don't. They get to that point, it becomes that very sacred time for women where they're going through a difficult time, but also clarity comes quite quickly. And I've noticed a lot of women go, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't like this. This has never really interested me. I don't feel motivated anymore. I want to change. But there are quite a number of women who love their jobs, who want to stay in their jobs, but they've got these physical and mental and emotional symptoms that's overwhelming them. And so they don't feel like they can stay in the job, or they don't know how to ask for help. So part of the work that I do is the advocacy as well. Is like, come on, we need to have the conversation. And I help them put points together, identify the people in HR that they can speak to, because that's probably the first place you need to go, right? You
Yeah.
don't necessarily need to go to your boss. You can go to HR because there's lots of, or they're supposed to be in corporate, a lot of employee assistance programs for various things.
Mhm.
So that's where a woman goes, and you start to then have that conversation. But I think if you're not having the conversation, no one's ever going to really know, or ever going to move towards that change. Change does not happen because we stay silent,
Mm.
right? And that was one of the things that I learned. I was one of the ones that ended up leaving corporate. Now, I was fortunate because I had a side business in career coaching and resume writing, which I had started 20 something years earlier, based on my own needs to change my career,
Mhm.
single mother, pregnant, alone, and having to start again. So I created my own system to create the kind of career and get the income that I wanted and that I needed at the time when I had to start over with my unborn baby. So I had that, but that was very much a part-time
Mhm.
business, very much side gig, maybe 5 hours a week. That was it. But I did have that something. And I also noticed, because one of the things I started to do was journal through that time. So I went through really crappy menopause symptoms for probably a year before
Mm.
I started to look at it and go, you need to do something about this. Like, you can't just keep trying to push through and hide and all of these things. So probably only a year after my very severe symptoms, I started to journal, reflect, I found a Eastern Western doctor. So I was working with a completely different GP, who was helping me through some of the symptoms and also helping me through. So he did counseling as well, this GP,
Mhm.
because he had trained with shamans, he'd studied counseling. And he was saying, it feels to me like more than simple physical changes and so on need to happen in your life. Like, you need to look at the whole picture.
Mm.
So he gave me permission, I suppose, was what I'm saying is he gave me permission. I should have given myself permission to learn there, right? And I suppose that's why I tend to be quite strong when I'm working with women, in terms of encouraging them to take that permission to go and have a look. What is it that you really want to do?
It's really interesting that we have to give ourselves this permission. And I find that a lot of times it's triggered by some kind of life event, right? You're talking about the physical symptoms that were preventing you from really executing your job to the level that you had been. You couldn't physically necessarily be in the room all the time. In my own story, it was changing my relationship with alcohol. I quit drinking, and that woke me up to the idea that maybe this isn't everything that there is. Maybe I can actually do more. That kind of insight that we have when we take these pieces that could be kind of hard. Sometimes they're very traumatic and they lead to something that oftentimes can be really incredible. Is that something you see often where there's like a pivot point for people that are coming to you?
Yes, so I always say that people don't reach out to me while things are going well. Right? And I've accepted it. I'm not that fragile in my ego. They never come to me when things are doing well. Now, I do have some repeat clients. Some women have been working with me for 10 years. So when they're ready to change and go to the next move or the next career, they trust me. We've worked together before. So they are the ones that will reach out. But most people don't reach out to me when things are going well. They reach out to me when they suddenly have a life-changing event or something has happened, a decision is being made, and it's impacting them.
Yeah.
Something is impacting them, and they recognize, for a lot of women, they go, I'm spending most of my waking moments in a job that I hate or in something that doesn't give me joy. Right. And so they already have the stress. There's already things going on. And that's when they reach out because they go, oh, my goodness, I need to change something. And a lot of women recognize, just like I recognize that, where do I spend the most time?
Right.
At my job.
Right.
So I need to do something about this thing because I'm like, this is where I spend most of my time. That means I need to somehow make it work for me because I can't go forward with the stress and this physical symptoms and this emotional symptoms and these mental symptoms, plus do a 10-hour day.
Yeah.
So I recognized that for me, it was like, what was the next best step I could do? What was the first step I could do? I had to reevaluate the place that I was working and how that was contributing to this already stressful time that I was going through. And I knew that that wouldn't change because when you're delivering huge programs of work that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, that is not going to change.
Yeah.
You need to be up to the task. You need to be able to manage the teams. You need to be able to pivot when things start going wrong. So that kind of level of stress is never going to change. And so that's when I started to really go into an assessment, what I would call a self-assessment. Mm-hmm. And go, okay, what is happening in your life? This is happening. These are the symptoms. This is the stresses. What can change? But then I also ask the question, like, are there moments when you're having joy or where you're feeling okay and feeling reasonably happy? Mm. And what I felt okay and reasonably happy was when I was writing resumes for other people. I was good at it, and I was also helping people get what they wanted. Mm. And I was like, it doesn't matter how stressed I am. Somehow the written word was always a thing for me. Even since a child, I was writing since I was a child. So I was always love telling stories, and telling stories in resumes. I noticed that was one of my, I suppose, empowering things that I could do. And it wasn't only making me feel good, it was helping other people. So I was like, okay, there's something I've identified. And I'd already been coaching people on through interviews, things like that, because everything that I'd applied to my life to get me through that career and get me climbing from strength to strength so rapidly, was what I was teaching other people. I was teaching them what I'd done for myself, really. And I noticed that even when I felt really yucky, when I sat down for an hour and wrote a story around someone's resume or their LinkedIn profile, or when I was helping them practice in interviews, I was like, I feel really good doing this. So I was like, well, you've got something already.
Yeah.
Let's go do something with it. Now, I will say, I did not just quit the job, and I don't advise anybody to do that. So I take people through a planning process and an exit process, because the worst thing you can do for yourself when you're stressed is put yourself under financial stress.
I was just gonna
right?
ask because I was imagining that like these people are coming to you and they're like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. Things have got to change, but there's still that fear there of changing. Like sometimes we accept the discomfort that we're currently in because we're afraid of the unknown discomfort that's on the other side. So I was actually gonna ask you if you had, steps or recommendations if people are like, I can't stay in this job, maybe I need uh, to have my own career so that I can be more flexible, especially if I'm having, physical symptoms. So can you give us a little taste of what those steps would be if you're going to have that transition period?
So one of the first things that I do with people, and I have this resource on my website, it's called Mining Your Story Process, and it's a foundational piece that I can be quite insistent on people doing, because when you do the foundations, then everything else becomes easier. But what I noticed too is that a lot of people struggle with doing that foundational piece. So the mining your story is we go into the patterns in their life where they felt joy, the moments or the patterns or the thread through their life where they felt good about something that they were doing. So we try to identify the strings of where there was goodness, there was joy, there was upliftment. That's one of the first things. Then we go through, what have you overcome? Because there's a level of skill that happens when you overcome something. A lot of people don't realize this, right? When people overcome, what they don't realize is that there's a level of skill that they employ to overcome anything. Sometimes it's courage, sometimes it's bravery, sometimes it's self-awareness, sometimes it's making a phone call that you don't want to make. There's a level of skill that happens, and a lot of people don't acknowledge that. So I do that piece in the mining your story as well. What have you overcome? What is the thread that is making you happy? What is your strongest skills that you love using? So we identify all of this. And then the next piece is, if you had the magic Harry Potter wand, what would the future look like for you if you could do anything? Yeah. Right. And this is where, I encourage them to be uncensored. Like, forget about all the restrictions that you think is on your life. Just have a stab at dreaming about your ideal job. And then we go through processes like identifying your top 20 companies. If you could work for any 20 companies, what would it be? Mm-hmm. And what would you be doing? As we pull these threads out and these stories out, that's where we start to shape the resume to be, and the LinkedIn profile to be a storytelling resume and LinkedIn profile, threaded with all their wins and their achievements, because so many people write resumes that are so boring, yeah, that tell someone nothing about them. I'm a project manager and I can do risk management, I can do change management. That doesn't tell me anything about you. And in today's current market, where things are so fiercely competitive and AI is threading its way through everything, you do have to stand out. And the way we always stand out is if we know how to tell our own hero's journey, our professional hero's journey and our personal hero's journey, and mesh them and show yourself as a candidate worth someone considering. But you don't get to do that really well and really effectively if you haven't done the foundational piece, if you haven't dug into your own story, owned your own story, because here's where I find people try to dismiss their stories, especially women.
Yeah. That wasn't a big
Women,
deal.
it wasn't a big deal. Oh, I just do that. Well, you know what? Someone will pay you money to just do that because they don't have that particular talent that you have. And so these are the kinds of things that I do with women, especially, but also with men. I do work with some men. Pull out those threads that are strong. And then the next piece is to know how to shape it up. So you shape it up as a story, as a professional story, matching some of your wins, your successes to job descriptions, looking at keywords and knowing how to marry it in a way that's simple and that's succinct. Because recruiters, hiring people are busy people. You need to speak to them in their language. Yeah. If you're speaking to them in this long-winded story, especially even in an interview, you are chewing into their time, and it also shows a lack of awareness for this busy person. And so all of these kind of things, it's a whole process that I take people through, right? So that's one of the pieces. But I'd say the first steps that we do is to identify the story, identify the wins, complete the mining your story piece. Then we start to shape up the documents, and then we start to find out where we can use the talents that we really want to use. And sometimes that means you've got to stay in the current job because there isn't an opportunity yet for you to use it, either in the current job or even in a different industry. But volunteering becomes really important because that is one of the best ways to test your skills, to go to an organization where you can volunteer the skills. Now, one of the reasons I say that this is a good way to test it is because I've also seen people get huge surprises. This happened with me. I was volunteering at an organization once. Some CEO was also volunteering. And he just pulled me aside one Saturday because we used to volunteer at this homeless shelter on a Saturday. And he said to me, I've been watching you for a couple of weeks, how you communicate with people, how you know how to get people to do tasks and to gel together as a team. He said, would you like to come work for me? Now, this happened out of the blue. And it's not only happened with me, because this is when I start encouraging my clients to volunteer and to go test their skills, to try and see if they can build up, or if they're missing skills, maybe go volunteer in a place where where you can build those skills. For some of them, they've also had similar offers. It's happened in a volunteering basis. Some high-powered decision maker is also volunteering and watching. You don't know where your opportunity is going to come from.
You know, my
So
mom
there's
is,
ways.
sorry, I was just going to say my mom is somewhere smiling because a couple of years ago, a little bit of time since then, I was getting into libraries, and she was recommending that I go out and volunteer. Like, you know, she was specifically saying within organizations so that I'm able to prove myself, show my skills, demonstrate that sort of thing. But and whether or not it's just in the library world or volunteering at a broader thing, I can imagine that there's a misconception out there around volunteering and it, you know, why should I give my time for free when I could be doing something for paid work? Are there other misconceptions that you see that you've combated over the years?
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly that volunteering piece is one. And the other piece that I also see where people worry about giving time for free is mentorship, right? So they go, oh, well, why am I going to go mentor someone? Because, you know, I need to be paid. So I think one of the things that people need to understand is that giving vibration in the universe is still incredibly powerful. Yes, we are living in challenging times in the world at the moment. You only have to look around the world to see how crazy things are right now. However, if someone that steps into a space and a vibration of giving, people never forget that, you know, and even when some of the things when I was coaching people through their careers, so a lot of what I did initially while I was building my own career, people would come to me because they knew the rock bottom I hit. They saw me climb out of it. They came and asked for help. I didn't charge any of those people. I was just so happy to have landed the role that I wanted. I was like, oh, yeah, let me help. Who else can I help? And people were coming. What happened was those people never forgot. And when some of them went on to other companies, a lot of the opportunities that I got came from people I had helped, even people who had reported to me. So they were my staff, but they went on to, because I was always trying to grow people and say, go and find your place in the world. Like, I don't need to keep you by my side forever. If you've outgrown this job, go, and I would help them. Great opportunities came at those companies. Those same people would call me and they go, there's a position for a program office manager here or for a hiring manager, and we've worked with you and we know you're good. Shall I put your resume forward? They would put my resume forward. I get an interview, land the job. So the cycle just keeps happening when you're in that space of giving. And so I think it's a misconception that people have. Oh, I'm not going to mentor someone because, you know, I don't have time to give, or I don't want to give my time freely. If someone wants to be coached by me or mentored by me, they need to pay for, you know, they need to pay me. Yes, of course, if that's your business, obviously, but you can also, I still do my volunteer coaching. I have people that I have a very soft spot for single parents, especially single women. So I have a program within my coaching where I do choose one woman a month and I work with her, and it's pro bono because I'll never forget the people that helped me. Yeah. Right. And so that cycle just keeps going around. And so misconception around mentoring, misconception around volunteering. You don't know where the opportunities can come from. And people never forget when you give to them. Mm. They never forget it. And a lot of my successes have come because of that. Giving before I even probably could, when I was struggling. But the thing is, when you're in a space of gratitude, or I was so relieved when I found the role that really started to catapult my career. And the first person came and asked me, I thought, why not? Why not help this one get there too? And then they tell someone. That's in fact how my business was born, word of mouth. Yeah. Still largely word of mouth.
I love that. I'm not a very religious or spiritual or woo person, but I do believe that what goes around comes around. And when we give, it encourages other people to want to give too. It's not like we're giving just solely to get back something. I'm sure the reason you're volunteering is not just to like get new job opportunities. It's because it actually enriches us, right? The act of giving is a way that we can receive in ourselves. So, I'm kind of curious. So we talked about some of the steps that people go through. We're writing the story, which I love. I think stories are so key in just about everything that we're doing, and shows that we are a real person in this AI age. So we talked about the stories of, the things that you've overcome, the things that you love doing. We have a lot of the tactical steps, but what about the mindset? I'm imagining you have some people with mindset blocks when it comes to making that change, whatever that change is, changing companies, positions, starting their own business. How do you work through the mindset blocks of it being just so scary or uncertain, or whatever it is that's hanging people up from taking that actual next step?
Well, one of the first things we identify, the first thing I'll say is I encourage people, especially women, to get on the self-care path. So it's like, okay, if you're going through menopause and you're going through severe symptoms, first thing to do is you need to go and talk to the GP. And if it's not a GP that is answering your questions, because mine didn't answer my questions, mine tried to just shoo me out of the medical practice. I went on the hunt for someone else, and I found this Eastern Western doctor, as I said, someone who'd been trained in shamanism, in counseling. He was very holistic, and he helped me in so many different ways. And so you need to advocate for yourself and go find that support that you need. The second step would be find the person in HR that you can talk to. If you're in a situation at work where you're feeling challenged, nobody should be going into an office feeling sick and stressed every single day. If that's what's happening to you, something is completely off, and that needs to be handled. And you can't go through life being resentful towards your place of work if you haven't been the person that's actually brought it to someone's attention, right? This is the asking for help, really, really important step. Now, when it comes to making a change, if you're getting ready to make a change in your career, you want to go into your own business, all of these things, and you're finding that you're feeling stuck, that you don't know. First of all, you might not know what the next action is, right? And even if you do know what the next action is, you don't know how to take it. My advice to people is forget, because the other thing I see, and this is everybody, this is women, this is men, this is grads I work with, they think they have to take 20 or 10 or 15 action steps. But if you go down that path, you're going to be sitting in overwhelm all of the time, and you're actually never going to move. So we identify the next best one action, only one action step. And it could be, I need to take a look at my resume, and I need to look at this thing. I haven't looked at it for 10 years. I haven't looked at it for 5 years, whatever. Okay, that might be the only action step. You don't necessarily have to write it or rewrite it. Have a look at it. Maybe the next action is I need to reach out to people I used to work with. And this is one I find a lot of people resist. They don't like reaching out to people. Yeah. But I've seen in life that people, largely human beings, like to support and help other people. There's something, it's like you just mentioned, there's a feel good that happens around that lifts our own spirits, right? And so reaching out to a colleague or 5 ex-colleagues, once a week, I'm going to reach out to 5 colleagues, ex-colleagues, or ex-bosses, or whatever, and see if there's opportunity. or decide to reach out to a career coach. Like, people could reach out to me. I do offer people a discussion, a free discussion with me, where maybe the only thing we identify is the direction you need to go, right? Because sometimes you need someone else outside of yourself to help you gain that clarity, right? And so there are practical steps, but you need to take them one at a time. If you try and do 10 steps at one time, there is no way your brain's going to be able to cope with that, especially a stressed out brain, a foggy brain in the case of midlife women, if you're suffering that symptom, or you're suffering from insomnia, so you're not sleeping very well. None of that's going to work. So for me, it's always one action step at a time and complete that. Because the other thing that happens is when you take the one small action and you actually do it and you actually complete it, there's a sense of accomplishment that happens. There's something that triggers in the brain. Oh, it's not so bad. I've done this one. So now what's the next one? Now I can do the next one. And you do the next one, and then I can do the third one. I keep things very practical. I don't rush through things. I've seen for myself. And so I know how to multitask, but I avoid multitasking because I see it putting me under pressure. I see it stressing me out. And so for me, I've become all about the less stress I have, the better. How can I do my work? How can I live my day? How can I live my life with as little stress as possible? And maybe if that's the only mantra someone picks up from this conversation, that's a good one.
That's a
Because it'll
great one.
guide you.
I mean, that's my business model, right? It's how can we make things simpler so we don't have to hustle all the time, work all the time? What can we set up to support us so that you don't have to go from a full-time job maybe to working 9 to 9 on your own business? And I think there was another the mindset reframe in there too that I heard where it's very common business advice when people are starting out to do that friends and family email, right? To reach out to your
Yep.
past friends and family, your colleagues, whatever that is. And a lot of
Yes.
times we get hung up because like, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to, I think that's the main issue there. I don't really want to bother people. But another way we could look at that is we're giving people an opportunity to help. And we feel good
Yep.
when we help others, right? So we're giving them an opportunity to feel good. And of course, presumably what we're offering has value. So maybe we're, actually literally helping them. We're not actually asking for something. We're providing them an opportunity to help them. So I think there's an important reframe there. I think that people get really stuck on not wanting to bother other people, but you're providing them an opportunity, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I see it as such, and I know a lot of people see it as such, an opportunity to help someone else,
Yeah.
because that that mentoring piece comes into that in a very subtle way. When you reach out and you go to someone, you know what? I'm thinking of a career change. I'd love to hear your perspective. That is, in fact, what changed everything for me when I was broke, destitute, pregnant with my daughter. I realized that the people, because at the time I was like, I need to make so much more money a year just to get out of the debt that I was in. And I was like, who can help me do that? And then I was like, well, the people that give jobs to people, the decision makers, which was the recruiters and hiring managers. And I reached out to people, and all I said to them was, I'm thinking of making some changes in my career. I'd love to have your perspective or maybe get some advice for you. People love giving advice. We all love giving it. That's
For
why we're
sure.
on podcasts,
Yeah,
right? That's why
absolutely.
we're doing podcasts, because we have knowledge. We want to share it. We want to make the road a little bit easier for someone coming up behind us. And so I thought people wouldn't say yes to me, but what surprised me was how many people said yes. The recruiters, that some of them didn't know me.
Mm.
I just reached out because they had sent me jobs maybe a year ago or 2 years ago. I wasn't ready to make change or anything like that, but I kept their name. I reached back out to them. I said, I'm ready to make a career change, but I don't really know where to start. These people had coffees, and I'm actually writing a book about it now, the one more coffee
Mm.
that changed my whole life, because I just kept going for one more coffee with these people, and they were just giving me knowledge, giving me their time over a cup of coffee, teaching me how to write my resume better, teaching me how to interview very effectively, being succinct and simple in my answers and having an example of an achievement. These are all things that a bunch of people taught me. I ended up putting it into a system that I now use when I'm coaching people, but it came from other people's knowledge and other people willing to help me. And that's why I say I never forget the people that have helped me and what it did for my career. And there is a level of joy, a level of feel good when you know you've contributed something to someone else. So
Absolutely.
ask.
Well, I'm going to ask you then. You are an absolute wealth of knowledge. You've given us so many gems here today. If someone is sitting there thinking, maybe they don't know what the change is, but there's some level of discomfort, whether it's physical discomfort, mental discomfort, all of the above, what is your advice for them? What's your Thrive in 5 for us?
Okay, so Thrive in 5, first thing is self-care. That is number one. You need to get that when you're starting to feel overwhelmed, and wherever you get it, you can get it from a friend, you can get it from a family member. I recommend you go to an expert. So if you're needing psychological help, because I did, and I realized that my family couldn't help me. Mm-hmm. There were certain things they didn't understand. I actually had to go to an expert. So go to an expert. If you're needing help with career change, there again, go to an expert. Even if you only have the initial conversation with someone like me who does it, so many minutes for free, let's have a chat and see if I can get you in the right direction. Talk to someone. You do need to start reviewing the resume. You need to review your story. Mm-hmm. Because that's going to feed the resume. It's going to feed the LinkedIn. It's going to feed how you want to be perceived in the world and how you want to offer what you have to offer, right? So, what have I said? 3 now. Get onto LinkedIn. I know people resist it. They hate it. A lot of people hate it. But it is networking. Networking makes a massive difference when you're trying to make a career change. You're likely to meet people that you never thought you would meet. You may get opportunities that you never thought you would get. And why I say network is so important is because in my 20 plus years of coaching, I have seen the best jobs, the highest paying jobs, the prime juicy roles, I call them, come out of networks, not out of job boards. They actually never go to the job boards. Yeah. The ones that everyone wants, all the perks, all the good salaries, the great working conditions happen through networks. So you need to get good at networking. And you have LinkedIn. You're not like me when I was 25 years ago. I had to turn up to a meeting, hand over a business card, chit chat to I don't know how many people in the room just to keep building my network, in the hope that, you keep getting opportunities, right? Mm-hmm. LinkedIn is there. You can do it in your pajamas. So do it. I know people hate it, but it is something that I do a lot of work with people on because I know they're resistant to it. I know they don't like it. Yeah. And then I suppose the fifth thing and the most important thing is one action at a time. One action at a time. Do not put yourself in overwhelm mode when you're already stressed out. The brain can't cope. My brain couldn't cope. I work with so many women and I see that they can't cope when they try and take everything on at once. It's like, what's the next best action? If it is making a phone call, make the phone call. If it is going to set up the appointment with the expert that you need the help from, do that. If it is just creating, a LinkedIn profile, just starting to create a profile, one step at a time is the way to do it. Because the moment you start getting the little wins with that one action, that builds the momentum and it also builds the confidence. And, being in action is what builds confidence. You can't wish for it. Yeah. It's actually doing it. So do your one step, just the one step every day, every second day, every third day, one step. What is the one step?
I think that's such a key way to end this, right? That next best step, because we talked about things they can be doing. They can be looking for their stories, minding their stories, expanding their network, joining LinkedIn, talking to their doctors, etc. But we can't do all of those things all at once, all of the time. It's what in this moment is my next best step, and then go do that thing. Then you can reevaluate again once you've done that. Wendy, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. I am so grateful for you and all your advice. Thank you so much for joining the show.
Oh, it's been wonderful chatting with you, Marcy, and absolute pleasure to pass on whatever I can pass on to others.
Well, since we're talking about that, where can people find you if they want some more Wendy?
So happycareerhub.com is my website, and that's probably the best place to find me. The free resource around the Mining Your Stories
Mm.
on that website. And also my calendar is there for people to book a session with me if they want to just have a chat about direction, next step, and so on.
Perfect. I'm going to have those links here in the show notes and get on LinkedIn, connect with Wendy. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great evening.
Yeah, you too. Thank you very much, Marcy.
Bye bye.